Welcome back to another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. Today we are welcomed by Brandyn and Jeffrey, who are going to share a little bit about their experience of a disappointment. I know in the adoption process, one of the fears that families will have is what will happen if I experience a disappointment or a disruption. So we thought it'd be helpful to sit down with some folks who have been through it. So let's welcome Jeffrey and Brandyn.
Hello.
How you guys doing?
We're good, thank you.
Can you guys first start by sharing when you first came to the agency?
Yeah, so we came to the agency, I guess about 3 years ago, right at the start of the pandemic. That's when we decided it was time to adopt. And we always knew we wanted to work with Adoptions from the Heart. We had just heard about them and knew a lot about you guys. So we always knew that we wanted to work with them. So we spent some time, getting everything together, getting our finances together. And then about 3 years ago, we started the process of, actually becoming a waiting family.
Okay. And talk to me about what your expectation was or is right now when it comes to birth parents and openness. Like, what understanding did you have of the birth parent role in adoption?
So part of that process, one of the education classes is on open adoption. And I think that was really enlightening, especially the book that goes along with that class or that's recommended. We're both big readers, so we gravitated towards the book there. And I think it kind of opened us up, and even meeting one of the birth moms that came to the education class, just when we came to the experience, I think that we had like a rough understanding of like what we thought open adoption was or what it might look like, but not really anything actually tangible. And I think that those, between the book and the class and meeting the birth mom during that course, just kind of like opened up our eyes to what it could look like and the benefits of it.
Yeah, and like we were always open. Like one of the reasons we loved Adoptions from the Heart is because it was open adoption. But as we've gone through the process, like we've become more in love with the idea of open adoption. Like every step of the way, we kind of, have become even more open. Like we, have, our certain amount of visits and all that. But, we always say like with our situation, like our baby wouldn't naturally have a mother. So we want a birth mom to be involved in their life. So we like the idea of the open adoption.
Well, and I think it's really interesting because oftentimes when just general folks are hearing about adoption, the focus is always on the child and the prospective adoptive parents building their family. Yeah. And I think that you hit it right on the head of our agency really tries hard to make sure we're educating families coming into our program about the birth parent experience. And I think that when you have a better understanding of what he or she may be going through before, during, and even after placement, that helps you as the adoptive parent. And that kind of helps prepare you for potentially what may occur on your own adoption journey.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to the topic of why we're all here. Talk to us about when you first got the call that you were matched for a situation.
So we had actually just gotten back from being on hold because we were on our honeymoon that had been delayed like 3 years because of the pandemic. And we had been so stressed about going on hold because we were away for like 3 weeks. We were so stressed about it. We're like, oh, we can't go on hold. Like, what if it happens while we're away? Like, but we went, and it was, a much needed relaxer. But as soon as we got home, our social worker called us a couple days later and said, hey guys, like you've been matched. Someone found your profile online and fell in love with you guys. And the baby's due in 2 weeks. And, she kind of gave us all the information that she could at the time. And we didn't react the way we expected, like we didn't scream or shout or anything like that. We were both just so shocked that we were like, oh, okay. And I think our social worker, Katie, was like, we're sorry, like, we're so excited, but we're just like in such shock. And she was like, I know. And then we just spent kind of a couple days in a whirlwind of like, oh my gosh, like we've got to get stuff together. We got to find out more information. And our social worker, Katie, was great about, keeping us in the loop every step of the way as she gained information. So she was really great. And then a couple days later, Katie reached out to us, and told us that the birth mom had changed her mind. And Katie was really good about from the beginning reminding us that it was a possibility. And I think, we had reminded ourselves that it was a possibility while we were waiting. And, that was part of the reason why we were, a little guarded.
I think that, again, like we were so stressed about the going on hold in the first place, for such a long period of time for the honeymoon, that like coming back right away from it was 2 days afterwards. And then, as I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, there wasn't, because the social worker of the birth mom was in the midst of an emergency placement, we weren't given a lot of information. Like we actually didn't know the gender of the baby, really any of the details. We didn't find out for like 24 hours after the initial match call, like even what state the baby was in, because again, there was the time lapse. It wasn't an emergency placement. So I think actually in the long run, that was kind of a helper to us. But I mean, I think that we also we told a lot of family and everything like that. So there was also kind of the undoing of that as well.
And I think the whole time we knew, before we even knew that it was a disappointment, we were thinking about the birth mom a lot. Like, what is she going through? How did she come to this decision? What kind of family support does she have? What did she like about us? So kind of putting ourselves in her shoes really helped when we did get the news about the disappointment. Just remembering that, this was a huge decision that she had to make.
Well, and what I'm hearing from you guys is it sounds like you had a lot of compassion for what this birth mom was going through. And one of the things that two things that I heard you say that helped. The first is not having as much information. And while that's not always the case, right? Sometimes you are more. One of the things I try to do is hold off on families getting involved as much as we can. So even when you're picked for like an emergency placement, not having you come to the hospital, right? Sometimes families are very eager once they're matched to jump in full throttle. Yeah. But for you guys, kind of taking a step back and not having as much information actually helped you when you got the call that she changed her mind, because you weren't as involved. So that's the first thing that helped.
Definitely.
The second thing that I'm hearing is the fact that you were able to put yourself in her shoes of what she was going through allowed you to not just focus on your loss of not getting this baby, right? But understanding what she must have been going through when she initially made the call, chose adoption, and then changed her mind again.
Yeah. And I think the classes that we take and the birth parents that we get to meet through this process really help you put yourself in a birth parent's shoes, because it really humanizes the situation. And I think, being able to reflect back on those experiences and those birth moms that we had met in the past really helped us be able to put ourselves in her shoes. And just knowing, what a scary, stressful situation she was in. And ultimately, we want the baby that's meant to be our baby. So if this baby wasn't meant to be our baby, then it wasn't our time. And so I think that kind of helped us as well.
Yeah. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, like we went through like an education process. And I also feel like during this process, we then become the educators for family and friends and stuff like that. So I think that in being able to kind of talk to them about like what that family is going to look like for us in the future, I think also kind of has helped us kind of talk our way or wrap our head around that a little bit more, as far as, again, kind of placing yourself in somebody else's shoes. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say that it wasn't difficult, but I mean, also, again, like Jeff said, like, I think that, again, we're trying to keep in the perspective of like, okay, the baby that's meant to be our baby and the birth mom or the birth family that is meant to be our birth family will ultimately be the people that are going to be the right match for us. So I think that the combination of the two things has kind of helped kind of keep that in perspective as much as possible.
Sure. I think families who own the child when they're matched, it's actually harder for them when they're experiencing a disappointment or a disruption, because you have to remember, you have not been placed with a baby yet. This has not become your forever child. It's a process. So even when you're matched and then placed, there's still a process that has to occur. And reminding yourselves, your partners, your extended family members that that's what's happening, as opposed to I'm now becoming a parent, can also be helpful for preparing for a potential disappointment or disruption. And that's really key.
Well, and I think it's so interesting you say that, because I think going through this process the whole time up until getting matched, we always kind of said in the back of our mind, like, well, how is that not possible? Like, how do you separate that? But then we got the phone call. And again, it is like it is a weird kind of emotional dynamic of like, holy cow, I'm so excited I got matched. But then you're also kind of waiting for the floor to drop out from underneath you at the same time. So it's like a very interesting emotional thing. And I think that, again, going through it, I was like, oh my God, of course I'm gonna be running around in the streets, like, and that emotion was in there, but it also is like in there kind of wrapped around kind of all of these other emotions in there. And that's even when it comes to, I know, like the idea of telling friends or family when you get matched is people kind of wrestle with that. I know that even the two of us kind of have a slightly different perspective on it. I think that it was a little harder on Jeff to kind of undo that telling in that situation. But I also think that, like, even though like none of our family and friends immediately have gone through this process other than the friends we've made through the process, which have also been helpful, I think it's still kind of there to have that network of people to just kind of like know that they like have your back kind of throughout this. And again, they can't completely resonate with those feelings that you're having, but they can still be there to support you through that, or just like let you kind of acknowledge the feelings that you're having was also nice as well.
Yeah, I almost feel like, you know, having to teach our family and friends about this, what it means, what the disappointment meant, I think it helps them understand adoption a little bit more, and has put us kind of in a better place with having them understand what we're going through and what we're still going to be going through even when we do get matched.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say to you guys, just hearing the language that you're using and the way you're able to really show that compassion and understanding for the birth parent role in all of this shows how educated you are about this. And, you know, kudos to all the classes that you took and, you know, the birth parents that you had the opportunity to listen to, because there's such value in that, which is why I say to folks, whenever you have the opportunity to meet a birth parent, whether it's on, you know, an educational class or a heart-to-heart fundraiser event, or wherever at the picnic, you just happen to come across a birth parent, you should feed into that, because you may never have another opportunity to meet a birth parent, or even to meet the birth parent of your forever child that you're one day placed with.
Yeah.
And using what you gain from that person and the stories that they share and the sentiments that they feel is going to be really valuable to you becoming parents.
Yeah. Someone said, like, when the disappointment did happen, someone said to us, like, oh man, aren't you so mad at that lady? And I was just like, no, I'm not, because it's her baby. And, you know, she was going to make the choice to place her baby with us, but she ultimately decided not to. And, you know, that's what's best for that baby. And it made it a little bit easier to have that compassion.
Well said. Well said. What would be your final piece of advice for other prospective adoptive parents who are really scared of what will this look like if we're matched and then he or she changes their mind, whether it's a disappointment or even placement occurs and then a disruption may happen. What would be your advice for them to help them prepare for it and to get through it?
To prepare for it, I would say utilize the resources that Adoptions from the Heart has. Go to the waiting family support group, connect with other adopted families who are prospective adopted families who are waiting, and even ones who have been placed. I think the people that we've met and we've been able to chat with and talk through, all these crazy things that don't happen in a normal day, being able to talk to them about has been really helpful. So I think having those people in place who understand what you're going through is my number one piece of advice.
Yeah, I would second that. I think just kind of having a good support system. Again, I don't know that you can 100% prepare yourself for it, but I think, again, just kind of keeping in the reality of that it's a potential in this process, and it's something that we've kind of signed up for, and there's just so much that's out of your control, and that's just an uncomfortable thing that you have to learn being as comfortable with as possible. And there's again, having that support kind of is a way to be as comfortable as possible. Again, whether it's family or friends, or again, the waiting family support group is really been wonderful. We've met quite a few people that I know Jeff is in more regular contact with kind of off of those meetings. So they've definitely been very valuable.
And I would say too, two things that I've heard throughout the process that have stuck with me are, number one is you're allowed to be excited. Allow yourself to be excited. It's part of the process. Even while you're guarded, still allow yourself to be excited. And also, again, to, stick with people who know what you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. I know every time I complete a placement and we walk in that room and, we hand the baby to the parents, I always say, I know this is really an exciting moment and I want you guys to enjoy this. And you're going to hear a lot of people calling you mom and dad, and, you should all want that. But I have to remind you, this is not your baby yet. And if you keep that in the back of your head, even if it's really small in the back of your head, it will make it a little bit easier if you do get that call that he or she has changed their minds. Yeah. And while families sometimes look at me like, you're being a negative Nancy, I think they do appreciate it because it's the reality of it. And this is a part of adoption, right? It's a part of the process, and it's a part of what all members of the triad have to go through. So it's real. And I think it's important that we have these conversations. While I'm sorry that you guys experience a disappointment, I agree that this was just not your forever child. And the fact that you can still show compassion for the woman who carried that child and had to make this very difficult decision shows what great people you are and what amazing adoptive parents you're going to be one day. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate your time and your ability to just be honest and raw and vulnerable about what you've been through. We're all rooting for you that your forever child is placed with you sooner than later. I know you're coming up on 2 years, which is rather difficult. Yeah. Hang tight, and I promise you will look back on this and it will all be worth it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We're hopeful that this topic will be helpful for folks who are watching AFTH TV. Continue to stay tuned, and we will see you all soon. Thanks so much.